I want to talk about, if you would, I want to talk about how you help people translate this aim and energy now that you've established into strategy.
Yes.
So like, how do you guide people through that process? Because that's where the rubber hits the road.
100%, because you got to get the experience in them. So I'm going to raise the energy. I'm going to start to introduce questions, and they're rhetorical questions, but you watch people start to process. If I say to you, don't think of the color blue, don't think of the color blue, don't think of the blue, we know what color you're going to be thinking about, right? If I want you to think about your mother, I start talking about mine. If I want to think about your high school years, talk about mine. You'll go into trance and you'll go to your place. Most change, I find, lasting change always happens in an altered state of consciousness. Well, you could call it hypnosis. Have you ever seen people go to an elevator and push the button that's already lit up? If you got $1 for every one, you'd be rich. Or you've ever been driving your car and then all of a sudden something gets you fixated and then you wake up and go, who the hell's been driving the car, right? People go into trance state. Trance just means you're more internal than external. So I utilize that. I let them go to their internal world and enrich their maps. And then once they have an understanding, the cognitive, and they start seeing the emotional consequences, now we have them do something while they're there. I call it E-cubing. I'm able to hold people that length because I believe people want to be entertained first in the world we're in today. We're not in the information age. It's over. It died. There's too much information. We're drowning in information, starving for wisdom. So what people want is entertainment. So I earn the right by making them laugh, cry, move them so much. The people didn't think they're going to be. The people came there like this, right?
Yeah.
In a matter of 15 minutes, that's all changed so radically. So now I have the right to educate them. And now I want to bring them the best insights.
Why do you think that convinces them? You know, because you just
described... It doesn't convince them, it opens them.
Yeah, but why? Because you just described it as entertainment.
Because it produces an emotional change, not just an intellectual one.
Why does that make them open to the difficulty of change?
Because they get comfortable when you're laughing or crying or moved emotionally. You're wide open. Things are not, you can't hang on.
Is that a matter of establishing something approximating trust?
Well, without a doubt, there's trust. I remember one time, a good friend of mine I've known him for 25 years, but when I first met him.
You make a connection.
Yeah, right? I was on stage and I go out there, so what you said, and I'm working in those days, it was the 80s, you wore a suit and tie and three-piece suit, like you on stage for 13 hours a day. And my friend, who wasn't my friend then, he came in and he was somebody dragged in there. He's like this. And he goes, I remember looking at you and watching you. And the sweat on your tie was gradually going through the entire day. It was soaked. My chest was soaked. I was dripping and I was giving every ounce of my soul. He goes, anyone could fake that for an hour or two, but 12 days, he said, that son of a bitch can up and jump. I can jump and make this thing happen too. And so there is a trust factor that happens there. But then you just said that's a consequence of the commitment that you're indicating by your, what would you say, your commitment to the project. Pure energy to serve them.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's
like that to do whatever it takes, right? And they get it. They get that I'm there in service of them, that I could do all this a lot less and be fine. And they'd probably be fine. I'm not looking for fine. I'm looking for transformation. That requires more. And then the answer to your question is, I have them do exercises where they take that insight and they do with somebody else. Let's say it's matching a mirror, learning how to create rapport unconsciously. Have them sit next to a stranger they've never met and mirror their body perfectly, have a third person adjust them till they're there and then say, tell me what you're experiencing. And the other person writes down what they're experiencing. And somewhere between 80 and 90% of the time, they will say the same feeling, but about 30% of the time, they'll see what this person is seeing. I'm on a boat, there's two children, they're blonde. I mean, how could they know that? Because they're tapping into the exact same thing that's happening in the nervous system next to them. Now, once you've had that experience, you don't forget it.
When I do a Q&A with people,
yes,
because I've met, I don't know how many thousands of people doing that. And then I also learned this in my clinical practice. If you watch, first of all, I kind of think of those Q&A lines like a wedding reception, because that's a privilege, right? To have that happen every night.
It's a privilege to have anybody show up to hear what you want to say.
Oh, that's for sure. And then they want to stick around and meet you. You should be pretty damn happy about that
too,
if you have any sense. But, if you watch people carefully, and this is also a way of not being self-conscious or nervous, you see that everybody has a tempo. And I found that if I reach my hand out to shake their hand at their tempo, I immediately establish rapport. And I think it's because I've indicated by something that subtle that I've watched them and I know them as well as I could know them given that I've only met them 5 seconds ago, right? So it really gets things off on a good foot. And that's mirroring.
And for your viewers or listeners, there are different modes of the brain. So when you're in a visual state, imagery state, you tend to talk more rapidly, use words like, I see that, I picture that, imagine that, right? Visual words, and this rapid because a picture's worth 1,000 words. When someone's more in an auditory state, they have a different tempo, a different approach, much more Jordan-like. And it also soothes. And for somebody who's in that state, it's great. And then there are people that we get into the kinesthetics of their body, and they're more like, I just don't feel it. I just don't get a sense of it. The audio's going, I don't hear it. I'm listening, but I'm not hearing it. Visual person. So by the way, visual people, driven crazy sometimes by kinesthetic people, we're all three, right? But in certain contexts. And so I tend to go more visual. I've got so much I want to share. My passion brings it. So that brings in energy. But if I don't slow it down over 12 hours, I'll lose a part of the audience. So the same thing, shaking hands. You reach out to shake hands, and it shakes the hands like that. That's the person's in the visual. Person goes like this, it's more rhythm, and they shake hand like that. It's auditory. Somebody's more hesitant, and they kind of reach out a little. It's more kinesthetic. I can even know by the way they're approaching me what language to use that will pull them in closer. Am I going to use visual language, auditory, or kinesthetic language?
How do you know
it can
that?
Change because I can tell by their movements. You can see if someone's more kinesthetic, what their movements are like, versus visual, what their movements are like. And you mirror it, and when you mirror it, they feel an unconscious connection.
Oh, yeah,
with
yeah.
You, right?
They feel like
you're already doing that.
Yeah,
you're doing
it. It's like a dance.
It's exactly like a dance. And you see people do it naturally. You asked about the audience. When I look at the audience, I'm looking at people and I'm seeing individuals, and I'm talking, people say, it feels like you're talking directly to me, and there are 20,000 people. Well, I'm sure you experience that as well. Well, it's because there's only so many patterns, but I care so deeply. I'm looking, I'm feeling, I'm talking directly to people, but I'm also watching. Because if you watch your audience, there's waves. There's a person there that when they change the leg and flip over, 4 other people do.
Yeah.
Right? And I start seeing the movements of the audience, and I go, okay, boom, I'm going after this guy. Because when I get him, I got 10 people. Right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm there.
So you can identify the people who trigger that.
Yes. And it's not always who you think it would be. Like there might be some strapping, guy, like, an athlete, a guy that comes in that's an NFL player, and people might be looking at everything else, but they're not influenced by him. And then there's this young lady right here, and she moves, or this mom, and she moves, and there's 20 people that seem to adjust.
I've never noticed that.
It's a fun thing to notice. It also makes me stay so awake because I have to be out here, not in here.
Yeah.
And that's why you can sustain engagement and sustain joy and excitement and everything else. We're moving their bodies. We're completely connected. They're altering their own physiology and biochemistry, and they're focusing on what matters most to them, not to you. And they're learning tools there's consequence to, and they get to feel the consequence in real time.